I think we can get started. Thank you everybody for joining the fundraising panel this morning. I'm Mahnaz Cavalluzzi. I'm one of the partners at Cerini and Associates. Today's panel, we're going to be diving into some of the challenges that nonprofits are facing with respect to fundraising, different strategies to help organizations achieve their fundraising goals. We'll explore creative and tech-forward fundraising approaches from events to AI to grants, and examine how board involvement enhances fundraising success. So please joining me today are three panelists, and I'll allow them each to introduce themselves. So Christine, if you want to start us off.
Thanks, Mahnaz. And thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Christine Deska. I'm the president and co-founder of Nonprofit Sector Strategies. We primarily focus on strategic planning and with a special drill down into board development, board engagement, and board management.
Darren.
Hi, everybody. Welcome and pleasure to see everyone. I'm Darren Port. I'm the founder and CEO of Powered by Professionals. We're a fundraising and event management firm based in New York City, and we work around the country and helping organizations with their fundraising strategy around major events. And we produce those events as well, run walks, galas, concerts, golf outings, any kind of major fundraising event, and bringing the strategy needed so that event is financially successful.
And Brian.
Morning, everyone. Brian Leidy. I'm the Chief Development Officer with Island Harvest Food Bank. I've been with the organization since last July, but have been working in the nonprofit space in pretty much all sectors, healthcare, higher education, human services for over 30 years. So I'm very much looking forward to our discussion this morning and hoping we can help provide you some insights on the future of fundraising.
Thank you all. I just want to remind all of our attendees to include any follow-up questions that you may have in the chat. We'll do our best to incorporate them in here. We'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. We want to hear what you want to know. If we do miss your question, we'll put you in touch with the panelists afterwards so you can reach out to them. Already in the chat, Kelly has started to share some resources. So we have a prior fundraising guide that we've put out. We'll put out some information on each of the panelists, so you could always reach out to them after the fact too. So we'll just start diving right in with the questions. So our first question today is for Brian. With economic uncertainty in 2025, how can nonprofits diversify funding streams beyond traditional grants, such as through corporate sponsorships and partnerships, social enterprises, or planned giving to ensure long-term stability?
The easy question to start out, the economy. Thanks, appreciate it. Very much, it's interesting. I think we can count on, as fundraisers, donor fatigue and economic uncertainty at this point in our world that we're dealing with. So it's unfortunately, many leading economists are forecasting 90% chance of a recession this year, and that's from higher cost of living and also tariffs, which is driving the rising costs and labor costs, disruptions and layoffs. We're already seeing a lot of warning signs. There's been cuts to major research at our colleges because of policies. Immigration policy shifts are impacting labor relations and pipelines. So we're seeing a lot of pressure put on the economy, which will unfortunately impact the available discretionary income that many individuals have to support nonprofits and the work we do. Federal and state pressure is at risk. Federal funding, especially for safety net programs, are being scaled back. At Island Harvest, we're seeing impacts already on emergency food assistance that's straining the state budgets. We're seeing $1.7 million right now, and it's just the beginning of cuts. And it's just having a real world impact on organizations like Island Harvest, who we're about 41% state and government contract and federal funding contracts. So it's a tough climate. So what do we do? And it's unfortunately making a lot of nonprofits make some very tough decisions. Like, we're a food bank. We're going to have to make some decisions about who gets food, what child doesn't get food, what grandmother skips her medication and buys groceries instead. It's just challenging. So We all have to be nimble and really approach things. And we're fortunate to have a balanced portfolio from all our individuals, corporations, and foundations. But we're, probably if we're compared with other food banks across the country and other human service organizations, we're pretty much, below the average on individuals. So that's, from our standpoint, really looking at strategic growth in individuals and launching more of a strategic philanthropic giving program focused on high net worth individuals and really personalizing stewardship, cultivation, moves management, and really taking a deeper, more intentional approach with donor relations. And we feel that that's, from a short term, going to help us, make up some of the funding we're losing. Long term, we really want to grow to having 70% of our portfolio from individuals. Right now, we're at about 40%, which is pretty low. I feel that, it's sponsorships and corporations. I'm looking at staying flat this year, so I'm not looking really as that as an opportunity for us. Foundations, though, we are looking at a deeper relationship with them. We probably get probably about 26% of our funding from foundations. And if you have the resources, I would say, look at strategically aligned foundations that you could reach out and develop relationships with. But that's still a long-term approach. But I feel if they're aligned with you, a lot of foundations are willing to have that conversation to support your work. I think that's all I have at this point, but anyway, we'll look forward to further questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. So our next question is for Darren. Innovative event formats like immersive experiences or peer-to-peer challenges can deepen donor engagement. What trending events can nonprofits use in 2025 to attract new donors and strengthen relationships with existing ones?
Thank you for that. What we're seeing is we're not seeing a complete change of anything, brand new ideas. There aren't that many brand new ideas, but I have some ideas I'm going to share with you. Some of the things that are really important, and we tend to fall away from this, and I'm going to try to bring us back to this, is these smaller cultivation events that allow you to really connect with the donors as well as your, supporters, members. Getting smaller gatherings, this might be a way to engage not only the people that are invited, but the person who's hosting it. So you might get a board member who you haven't been able to really get to the next level with, and this is an opportunity for them to do something because maybe they have an amazing apartment or something that they're willing to host a small gathering in their home. It also gives them a chance to invite their contacts, which should help you expand your individuals that are tied, that could potentially get tied to your cause. Some other things that we're doing on a larger scale at events. One way we're kind of connecting with the audience is we're having stages, not only the stage up front, but there's a stage in the middle of the room. So this enables the MC or the auctioneer or some live entertainment right in the middle of the room, kind of is a little more interactive. So it's like an interesting technique to use to try to connect with your audience in an event. It doesn't have to be a whole blown out stage. It could be literally a platform, but it kind of gives the room a little more interactive feel. They feel a little more connected. Another thing is having someone who is tied to your mission speak and really drive home the mission. Maybe it's a celebrity, maybe it's someone that ties in with what you're talking about and can really hit home by telling a story, how they're connected to what you do. One thing we did for an event recently, which is another way to kind of make the room feel a part of it and connected. So we work with an organization called Upwardly Global, and that's all about connecting and helping families and individuals that are here from other parts of the world. So at the event, we created a wall that had the entire world on it, and you could go and put a little sticker on where you're from. So you could actually, and then everyone was standing by the wall talking, oh, let me hear more about you, learn about your story. And it was very interactive, and very casual and interactive during the cocktail hour. It was an interesting way to do that. Obviously, that was fit for their specific mission, but using things at an event, either video or some sort of printouts that can kind of tell your story, maybe show the life of what has occurred over the years. Also from your foundation, the progress. People want to know that there's progress made. If I join this group, if I get involved, what are they actually doing? So those are just some ideas. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think those are some pretty unique ideas I haven't seen yet. So I think that'll help bring in fresh blood. The next question is for Christine. Board members often shy away from fundraising due to discomfort with asking for donations. How can nonprofits train boards to confidently make effective donor asks, leveraging their personal networks? And then further, if they still feel uncomfortable, how can nonprofits leverage the relationship and even the board member's physical presence to still get the ask made?
Thanks, Mahnaz. Great question. I mean, there's a lot of angles that, we could tackle this question with. I think I'll build on where Darren kind of left off in terms of he was building in an interactive component to events. And I would say that what I've seen work really well is building in an interactive component among your board gatherings in some way. And there's a number of ways you can approach this to really see sort of those aha moments emerge. Of course, if you're able to set aside time for a retreat where it's not that rote meeting, agenda, to really have that conversation with your board members. Or if you're able to add in something like a mission moment to your board meetings, where it's a 5 minute, someone shares how they tie back to the mission and what was most rewarding for them as a board member serving, but then really pairing that with some time. I tend to call it, and for the folks I've worked with who may be listening, I tend to call it a relationship building exercise, because the fact is many and most, I would say, board members are not inclined or comfortable, quote unquote, asking, but are they comfortable doing other things? And so what I kind of zero in on is this convergence of your board members' top skill sets, their top social circles, and their ability or access to make an introduction, possibly make an ask for the folks that do have that comfort level. But it's making an introduction, it's inviting in for a tour, it's inviting a friend to an existing event. It's how about asking a board member to thank an existing donor, right? So as development leaders like Brian, they pave the way and can leverage a board in many different ways depending on where their comfort level lies. And how do you find that out? By really making the space for that sort of interactive session. So there's a lot of really simple ways, I would say, that your organization could consider at your very next meeting, just building in that extra time. And I know that may even feel overwhelming giving the funding and the climate that Brian so eloquently described at the beginning, but it can really go a long way. Even if you start with a round robin session where board members go around and share their why they connected to your mission initially, why they still are connected to your mission. And even if you're meeting virtually, having some quick breakouts and having folks share these social circles, share their skill sets, and come back and say, here's an action step that I feel most comfortable taking. When you kind of bring folks together and make it a little bit their own, I think you'll be surprised what sort of comes out of that. And then, of course, just to wrap up, you can't just let it lie there, right? The follow through is so important, right? And we'll kind of touch on accountability later on. But if your board and your team sort of witnesses the all talk and no action, I think that is an old country song I like. If your board witnesses the all talk and no action sort of repetitive cycle, that will become sort of a culture, right? So the follow through and making sure you go back to all of your members with what they committed to do is really, really important as well.
Thank you. So kind of want to bring everyone together on the next question. Maybe you can all chime in with your experience and insight. Building trust is critical for donor retention. What are the best practices for managing donor relationships, such as personalized follow-ups or transparent impact reporting to keep donors engaged long-term?
You want me to go?
First, go ahead.
I can go. Well, trust is a premium. And unfortunately, we're in a period in history where there's a little bit of an assault on civil society, which erodes that trust, and it's eroded across many, many institutions, from the government to local nonprofits like ourselves. And so building trust isn't isn't optional. It's really something, it's the foundation of how we can retain our supporters, and it's what we really need to do. And people give to people, and they give to missions they trust. So that's important that you start with that, and that it's not a transactional approach. The most effective strategy I find is just consistent, meaningful engagement that goes beyond the transaction of a gift. It's that handwritten thank you note. It's a short, personalized update based on, something that donor cares about. Quick phone call, just so you notice them and you appreciate them. And I think impact reports are so important, and prioritizing and sharing stories and data, having that balance of, who we've helped, how the funds were used, and how it ties back to their intent is very critical. And it brings them closer to the mission. It's visits, it's videos, stories from the field, not heavily produced things. It's more the, very simple videos. But having relationships with donors that are honest and challenging sometimes to have those conversations, and welcome feedback and celebrate the shared successes. So I think, why it works to me is that when you lead with empathy, transparency, and your intention, I think the trust follows, and it'll being retained as a donor will be a byproduct of that strong, authentic relationship that I think is critical that we, have to support our missions.
And I guess I could add to that and just say, when you think about what Brian shared about people giving to people and that trust element, that's where having board members that are willing to be the ones to write those personalized thank you notes, you supporting them as a development director, of course, with the overall strategy, but that note coming from someone serving versus a staff person can make a real impact and resonate more so with someone who may have the ability to give more. And, you can kind of look at your database and see who that low-hanging fruit could be, and be more strategic in that way. But I mean, Brian hit it spot on. Trust is essential, and maintaining it and building it and being authentic. So I'll just reiterate much of what he said.
Yeah, and a couple of things to add would be that you want to get to know them a little more personally. So what's happening in their life? Is there one thing that you can kind of figure out that's going on in their life and check in on them, so that every time you're calling them, it's not about the organization and what's happening at the organization and what they need to do next. So, it kind of just piggybacks on what Brian was saying to a degree. And then the other thing is showing hard data. So showing progress that's made internally with the work that they've done and the work that you're doing as an organization, and maybe inviting them, even though most likely they're unable to attend. Oh, we have this thing at the Capitol, or we're doing this a special announcement with the hospital that we work with, or depending on your cause, obviously. But having them come to attend and to sit in, they don't have to do anything, just you're invited if you'd like to come see our presentation, or we're getting this award because of the progress that we've made on this project. So something like that is just inviting them to other things will kind of build your overall rapport with them.
Definitely. Thank you all. The next question for Brian. Crafting a compelling ask is an art. What strategies can nonprofits use to make authentic, mission-driven donor asks that resonate with both individual and institutional funders? And further, are there any key elements that should be included in each ask, or is it more of a feel thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and such an important one. Because I feel, unfortunately, a lot of we don't get it right all the time, but telling our own story and then telling it, because it's very much an art, but it's also a little bit of a science. But the art is overriding in a lot of this. So it's really finding that balance of crafting a compelling case. We're in the conceptual sale business. We're not selling a tangible product. So we're, really bringing people along with us on a journey of people they may not be connected to in any way. I've worked in the nonprofit space and human service where, you're working with youth that are in transitional housing, or, having mental health issues. Now, people can relate to it, but they really don't know the journey that many of these youth are on. So how do you make that real for them, and they can and really be engaged. And it becomes challenging, especially when the organization has many different programs and different focuses. How do you, bring them into that world that we think we know well, but really is a little cloudy. So I think it's really being intentional in providing visuals. I think some pictures and infographics are so key nowadays with designing pieces that kind of bring people along with the data, so we're not overwhelming them and throwing the kitchen sink at them. And making sure that the piece doesn't just talk about raising money. It's about what the journey that individual or that type of person is on, and how we're making an impact and changing their lives. So I know over the years I've been in the foster care world, looking at a young woman's journey from foster care to college, and what are the milestones along their way, and showing the time in their life, and just, providing then some stats on homelessness for people that are in the age of 21, and the return on investment. That's what, donors and supporters are looking for, how you change the life, but how it's also then relieving the system that the tax dollars are funding. Many of us are, third-party contractors, and they want to know the impact, their investment, and then how it's helping our society, and then how it's saving dollars. So the key points I would have for a strong ask are a sense of urgency. We need this now because these people's lives are being so impacted now. A clearly defined solution. What is it that we're trying to accomplish for these individuals, and how we're making a difference? And then, a respectful invitation for them to partner with us. And a lot of this is done individually, but you want to be able to have that message in any piece you have of the call to action. Well, how are they going to help? And then a believable, measurable outcome. You want to be measurable and have it be concrete for them, and have them feel part of that solution. And the art really comes with when knowing the emotional. You want to have the emotion, but you want to also have data that you lead with that makes it concrete as well. And then it comes with listening to your donors and what they're looking for, and then staying grounded within their world. And I would just say in closing, authenticity and follow-up are the key. Really being purposeful and being authentic and clear, and don't give up.
Definitely. I think that persistence helps along the way. So our next question is for Darren. Hybrid events are trending in 2025, blending in-person and virtual elements. How can nonprofits design hybrid fundraising events that maximize donations and strengthen donor connections across platforms?
Thank you. Well, we're not seeing it as much as maybe you guys are seeing it, but we haven't seen as much hybrid happening in 2025 as we were, I guess, when we were transitioning back from COVID. But I will talk about a few of the things that you could do if you are in that space. But we are seeing most people just want to be in the room, in attendance, and part of it. But what technology you're using is critical. Making sure there are almost too many choices out there. So understanding what the technology tools that are available do, and how they integrate with users, not only live, but also virtually if you decide to have a hybrid component. And that includes from text messaging to being able to bid on their auction items if you're not at the event. That's something we're seeing a lot of still, so that the auction can be sent out a few days early. That people don't have to be at the event; they can still participate in that. That's a component that you should have a hybrid component. Should have available to people virtually. The live is a little harder to do that with because of the intensity and the timing of that. And the energy in the room, which is really hard to do a virtual component to that. But the other things you could do is you could ask questions or share information about the nonprofit and what's happening in your space, and progress that's being made through polls, through different to questions and chats that can go on through those tools. So those are things to consider. But like I said, we're seeing most people attending, and now we're really just trying to leverage technology in the room, making sure everyone who registers, we have their phone number. you want to be able to text with everyone in the room. So that's a critical component, is to collect the cell phone number at all these events. Email is great and everything, but everyone's getting so many emails that people are responding to text messaging. So, and also you can communicate at the event. Check your phone right now. We just sent you a text, and then you can get a response either to give. And then if you want to have online giving on a screen, you could have people giving from outside and at the event. And those names and numbers can increase up on the screen if you decide to do something like that. There are reasons why you don't want to do that as well, which I'm not going to go into. But you just have to think through all this all the way through, because there are reasons why people are doing them and not doing them. Because there are challenges to everything, as everyone understands. But happy to talk to anyone about it for 15 minutes and share a bunch of different experiences.
Definitely. Well, I think I hear what you're saying there, that it's important to know your audience before you really apply any of these strategies, sort of think it through and how it's going to impact your donor base or your event attendees. So our next question is for Christine. Effective board engagement requires aligning fundraising efforts with the organization's mission. How can nonprofits empower board members to champion fundraising initiatives and take ownership of donor outreach?
Thanks, Mahnaz. Yeah, this is a good one. And it kind of piggybacks on some of what both Brian and Darren mentioned. I mean, never, I think, more than now is board education really important, just to set that foundation of what is expected of the folks that are serving, and alleviate some of that anxiety that could be kind of coming through, given all of what we're hearing in terms of what's emanating from executive orders and funding cuts and such. But to also highlight Eileen's comment in the chat, Eileen, the head of the Book Fairies organization, many of you know, board members should be made aware before they join the board that fundraising is a responsibility. And what does that look like for your organization, right? What is that, as Ken always says, give and get, and what is significantly meaningful to that particular board member? I do like to talk about how that can vary, and you can certainly leverage board members' networks and relationships to create even more of a value than an individual ability to give. But until you have those conversations, and to Darren's point, getting to know your board members on a deeper level, that way that donor fatigue that Brian mentioned at the onset, which is an ongoing challenge, can be alleviated somewhat if they know you have another common interest to interact around, regardless of how much you've been able to give or they've been able to give in a given year. So I think when we talk about, what our board members view as their expectations, having this clarity, having that roles and responsibilities document that you consistently reference is essential. And however you implement that, it's never too late. I always say, and I know many organizations have what they refer to as the old guard and the new guard, and this sort of revolving board, and how to really have the conversations you need to. But taking a step back, thinking about your organization's strategic goals and where you're headed in the next couple of years, thinking through what you really need from your board members, right? Is it a commitment to serve on a committee that they haven't taken that step yet because you didn't ask? You didn't make it a requirement. And do you have a development committee if your organization is looking to partner more with the director of development? Do you have that group of folks tasked with that set of accountability? And lastly, the clear message, being able to arm your board members with what that social return on investment looks like, right? What that impact looks like, as Brian mentioned, art and science, right? Seeing the numbers, but also the story combined, and consistently sharing with your board members what that looks like for your organization is so key, because we are also inundated with a variety of messages, a variety of asks, and how can we get that message 7 to 8 times into our audience so that it finally resonates and permeates those outside. But our board is our low-hanging fruit. They've already agreed to contribute, to be invested in your mission. So don't underestimate what you could uncover when you engage them in the right way.
Thanks, Christine. I think that ROI, return on investment, has been sort of a recurring theme, whether it's with the board or with your donors. We've heard that response a lot today. So the next question is for all of the panelists, if you could all chime in with your experience. Technology like AI-driven donor analytics or mobile giving apps is reshaping fundraising. How can nonprofits ethically use these tools to diversify funding and deepen donor relationships without alienating supporters? Darren, you want to start? You sort of
Sure.
touched on this on the
Sure,
last
kick it
question.
off. Yeah, one thing I would say from an AI standpoint is that you should be leveraging AI. But one, I'll give you an angle here, is leveraging AI to do some of the things that you were doing manually before and you were thinking through before, and it saved you a lot of time. And use that extra time to build those relationships back with these donors that we're talking about. I think between Brian and Christine, they gave some amazing ideas on how you can further build the relationships with those individuals. And AI can help you with some of the letters you're creating, some of the, we use it for auction descriptions and things that are like easy to do. You have to obviously read them and put your own touch on it, but saving time by letting AI do the research for you, create the drafts, and then having someone personalize it on the team, that can buy you back time that can be implemented in different ways. Another thing is making sure that the technology you are using at your events, it works, because God forbid you have a problem with some of the technology, then you lose all the momentum and people get very frustrated. And once you lose a donor or make a donor frustrated due to a technology glitch, that is a big issue. So you want to really think through what you're using and make sure you've tested it or have worked. Other organizations speak very highly of the tool. I'll let Christine and Brian jump in on the AI stuff.
Want me to go first, Brian? Okay. I would just say there's so much information around AI right now. And I think Darren made a great point about think about what you can automate, what you know you have to do where AI could make it easier for you. And I would say that in a different way in terms of when you think about your organization's goals and your development strategy, then zero in on the AI tools that could be out there to leverage, right? Because here's an example. Universities now are installing AI chatbots on their sites, and with great success, it turns out there's a whole population of folks that want to give without actually talking to a human, right? I'm not sure which generation that is, but that's a thing now, right? Some people just want to go on and give. They don't actually want to have a real conversation. They know it's a chatbot, and that is actually working, right? So if that's something that fits with your organization and where it is in its life cycle, maybe that could be the way to go. But you really have to think about what your goals are. Right? Are you looking at retaining donors? Are you looking at engaging new donors? Are you looking at new ways of doing wealth screening? There's some really cool tools out there. We were in a tech accelerator last year where we learned of identifying donors and many layers of data and being able to do outreach to them through their LinkedIn interests and really coming to them in a personalized way, but it's really generated through AI. So there's just a lot to consider. So before kind of getting overwhelmed by the many possibilities, maybe just start with your goals and see what could plug in. And lastly, to emphasize what Darren mentioned about content, we created a fundraising coach that's free and available on our site at Bell's Board, and it simply generates template content from generative AI for a board member to be able to say, write a thank you note to an existing donor or invite someone in for a tour. And it just gives you or your board members that quick head start on how to do that outreach. So arming folks with that content and anything you can do to kind of handhold along the way, because we know many board members need some handholding. But if we can use technology, then we can also save ourselves time in the process.
Great. I think Christine and Darren had some great points, and it's certainly the new frontier, and it's still burgeoning for me and my use. And I've tried to always make sure to maximize technology and the use of fundraising over my career. So certainly we're exploring it, and it has just from my perspective the ability to expand access and personalize engagement. But it matters, it matters how you use it, probably less of the tool you're using. But it can help understand patterns of giving, I think. We're exploring that and giving behaviors for new prospects and identifying. And it's also, when you mention the mobile apps, that helps make it easier and immediate for people to support, which is always nice. You don't want to put barriers in between people supporting. But I think the cautionary tales are you want to inform, not manipulate. So it's, how do you do that? And you want to make sure full transparency of when things are generated by AI that, I think is important. And transparency being the key, and balancing the tech versus the human connection. You really want to, tech should never replace the human connection. It should enhance and do what Christine said. Look at your goals and see what Darren said. What are you doing that is labor intensive that you can put aside and help AI help you be more productive. So I would think it's going to be an effective thing, fundraising tool, and I'm looking forward to adapting more of it. Any suggestions, please pass them our way because it's a new world.
Thank you all. So our next question is for Brian. Storytelling is a powerful tool for donor engagement. How can nonprofits craft narratives that highlight impact and inspire giving, particularly when diversifying into new funding streams like major gifts or endowments?
Yes, and I sort of hit on this in my previous response to a question, because storytelling is the heart of effective fundraising. It really is. When I sit with a donor, they don't want to hear my story. They want to hear how the organization and how the success stories we're having with individuals. So it starts there when building out a major gifts program or endowment, because facts alone don't move individuals. I've been in many events where you have a scholarship student or a foster care youth who's going off to college, or you name the story, and that person, when you work with them to help tell the story in a concise and an emotional way, can move donors more than any fact could ever do. So it's very important to have the storytelling approach. And I think it helps donors see themselves as part of a bigger picture, and that sustains their interests, not just in that moment but long term. And I've had many donors come back to me and remember when so and so spoke at an event, and it lasts with them. And endowment, from an endowment and planned giving approach, I think really helping donors understand the generational impact they're having through storytelling, and not just the story of the individuals we're impacting, but I think it's important for the legacy giving to show them that their peers are helping have a legacy impact and that they could be part of that and telling their story. So using examples of other donors and supporters, I think that's from a major gift standpoint is very effective as well, of telling the journey of a longtime supporter of the organization. I've had many supporters that was multi-generational. So, and that's a powerful thing. And when a trend we're seeing right now is, families that have been giving for many years, they're really involving their children. They could be teenagers and they're sitting around the table and deciding, we have this amount of money to give away each year from our family foundation or donor advised fund. Where is it going to go? And I think having the ability to tell a story through that they're able to share with their younger generation is important. So I would leave it at there.
The next question is for Darren. Post-event donor follow-up is often neglected, risking lost connections. What practical steps can nonprofits take after events to nurture donor relationships and convert attendees into recurring supporters?
Okay, there's a bunch of things, and I know we're running out of time, so I want to run through these quick. So I'm going to list them out. But you want to make sure you are sending notes, right? But I would say don't send a note if you're sending a templated note. If you're not going to personalize a note, don't send the note. It is worse to send a templated note than actually not to send a note at all. Send a personal note, take the minute, write something in. You can use a general email or that you use or letter that you use for everyone, but make sure there's at least 1 or 2 sentences that track back to that person, something very personal. It's critical. Overall recap of the event is important, that the organization is sending that out. Even if you don't get a lot of responses, people like to see it. They know what happened. Make sure you have pictures so they can look at themselves if they want. but also hit on the critical things that the money raised, here's what it's going towards. Remind them what your mission is and where the dollars are going. Another thing we do for honorees and award recipients at these events is we'll actually do a framed item for them. So we'll take pictures of them at the event, maybe the invitation or something, or the logo, your logo, and maybe a picture with them with a bunch of their friends, either getting their award and then with their friends, and then send them a 3-framed item. Inexpensive, doesn't have to be a fancy frame. It keeps your organization top of mind for them. It reminds them of the special night it was when they were recognized. They did get an award that night, but this is a lot more personal, and it's a great follow-up a month later. And then they'll probably reach back out and thank you, and then you can re-engage with them for other ideas.
Thanks, Darren.
You got it.
Christine, what is one actionable tactic a small nonprofit can use in 2025 to boost board engagement in fundraising, such as hosting donor cultivation events or setting clear fundraising goals for board members?
Thanks, Mahnaz. So I think we just got the 5-minute warning, so we can at least answer questions. Darren, that was so concise, that what you just rattled off and helpful. Small nonprofit in 2025, right? So I mean, for the small nonprofits listening, I mean, I think all of us know that you're all doing at least 5 jobs. You're all saddled with trying to keep up with what's going on in the current climate, and to know how important it is to engage your board, but maybe also be worried you don't have the right folks serving on your board just yet, and how you're going to get there, right? So I think the one thing that I would say to do is to consider getting together and having a session where you reflect on your organization's goals and where you're headed. You have to start there. And if you don't have that clarity, you're kind of doing yourselves a disservice. And coupled with that, I'm happy to share, if anyone wants to reach out, the template, relationship building exercise that I do to kind of get the juices flowing and help you at least see from your current base of members where there's opportunity to grow in the near term. Because of course you want to see some short-term growth, but you also need to be thinking about how you do scale and where you do want to be, or are you looking to partner with other organizations, and identifying so many of these components at once. And so if you don't yet have a development strategy in place, I hope you've heard a lot from Brian that can really feed right into where your organization might want to consider kind of getting something down on paper that creates that alignment and that collective accountability with your fundraising goals, but also your impact. So that's a long way of saying get together and have an intentional conversation. And there's a lot of pro bono consultants out there that can come and help steer the conversation for you. And that can help just to have that outside sort of perspective guide the conversation to make sure that we've all been down the rabbit holes that can occur when we attempt a bigger conversation. But without that, you don't know what the expression that I always use. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there? So that would be my guidance.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for answering all of our questions today. We have about 2 minutes left, so we have one final question if anybody wants to chime in. So looking to the rest of 2025 and beyond to 2026, what fundraising challenge or opportunity, such as shifts in donor expectation or new funding models, will impact nonprofits most, and how should organizations prepare now? So if anybody has a quick response to that last question before we let everybody go.
I'll give you a quick one because I think it's a trend that I know we're seeing across the food bank world, but I've also talked to other colleagues in other sectors, is that we're seeing fewer total donors, but larger average gifts. Initially, you may say, it's not that bad of a thing, but that concentration increases fundraising risk because that's fewer donors than you're relying on. So you want to really double down on, the engagement with those donors to mitigate that risk, and full transparency, demonstrate results, building the trust we talked about. Invest in storytelling and data systems that you're able to keep track of the donors, and having feedback loops that are there for, helping educate yourself and educating donors. And I just think it's, very important to be flexible, value-driven, and prepared for a challenging landscape ahead of us.
Thank you, Brian. Before anybody else chimes in, we're going to run out of time. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. The next sessions are the accounting update and the IT and cyber update. So you can sort of choose which session you'd like to join next. I really appreciate all of you taking the time. Thank you to our panelists this morning. You offered a lot of great insight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Mahnaz, and Cerini
Thank
team.
you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
all.
you. Nice
Great
meeting you.
job.